guys. Just watching that squirrel reminded me of it's story time again. I think I'm only going to do them when I'm at the cabin here. It's the only time I sit still long enough to really do one. So, but I wanted to, somebody asked me, I can't remember when, but anyways, about animals. Have I ever been, scared of animals? And you have a healthy respect for certain animals. Anybody who travels in the north country lots, knows that probably the most dangerous animal in the bush, although it's for a short spell, just 2 weeks in the fall, is a bull moose. They're by far the most unpredictable and dangerous, in my opinion. Although people have been killed by bears, and I'm not sure how many people have been killed by moose, but I've had several incidents where I always had a bad habit when I was on my trap line. When I was walking through the bush, I'd hear a noise, and I'd wonder, I wonder if that's a moose. Maybe if I give a call, I'll find out. So, I'd give a challenge grunt. And sometimes, it'd be nothing, but there are the odd times. Like one time in particular, I remember, this has happened several times, but one time it was just, I called out a challenge grunt, and man, it was like a freight train. This moose, I don't even know how big he was, but he was good size. He come tearing that, he was probably only 40 yards, 50 yards away from me. And he come tearing through there, and I just got behind a big spruce tree, and I just stood as still as I could. And he was on the other side of that tree, maybe within 10 feet, I guess, and just tearing little trees up out of the ground with his antlers, and just, I never, I stayed behind that tree, and I kind of peeked around a little bit, but I didn't want to give him anything to look at, to focus his apparent rage on. And so I just stayed quiet, and he eventually calmed down and went away. Most moose, when you do that, they'll come in, pretty quiet and slow. And if you, you just wave them off, they'll calm down and wander away. But another instant with moose that this one here stands out in my mind so vividly, because it was just such an adrenaline rush. I was paddling across a lake on my trap line in Ontario. I had a chain of lakes, portages in between. I had 3 canoes in there over the portages, and I got onto the middle lake, and it was about a mile long, this lake, maybe a quarter mile wide. And it was a pretty strong wind blowing. And on the north shore of the lake, there was a little knoll that maybe 30 feet above the water level, that the beavers had over the decades chewed all the trees off it. And there was nothing but a little bit of brush growing around, like little willows on the shore, and and some little shrubs up on the side of the hill. But there was a big cow moose grazing up on the top of that little knoll, just eating some of the little shrubs and stuff like that. So, I paddled down the opposite shore and just kept my eye on her, and then got downwind, and I turned into the wind and paddled up, and I was in the wide open, obviously, on the lake in a canoe, and every once in a while she would glance at me, and when she looked at me, I'd just stop paddling. But I was focused on her, so that I could, every time she stopped, and turned to look at me, I could, instantly stop paddling. And so I eventually got right up to my canoe beached onto the shore there, and I was just watching her. So at this point, she's maybe, 20 yards away. And I mean, this is right during the rut, and I couldn't, it kind of was in my mind, why is she by herself? Because there's lots of moose there, not like around here. But so I thought to myself, well, I wonder what she'll do if I give a bull grunt out. So I set my paddle across the gunnels of the canoe and let out a good bull grunt. And me being focused on her up the hill, and this long grass right in front of me, and the little bit of shrubs right there, all of a sudden, straight up out of that long grass, this bull, about 50-inch rack, stands up, and he is pissed. He's got that cow there, and all of a sudden there's an intruder in there, and he is straight upwind from me. But his front feet are no more than one step from being in my canoe, and he's on shore, so he's maybe this far above the water, his feet, and then with the size of him, I mean, it looked like I was staring into the eyes of a demon that was 20 feet tall, because it was like, holy crap. And he, like, it's so hard to describe, the eyes, just fire red, every hair on his body standing up. He's trying to get my scent, and he's clearing his nostrils, and he's blowing snot all over the canoe. And that is probably the most fearsome encounter I've had with an animal in the wild. Like, it was just such an adrenaline rush. Oh my God. Even more so than those who read the first book, being surrounded by the wolves in the middle of the night, being trailed by them, and having them within 6-7 feet of me, or whatever it was. That at the time didn't even have that kind of a rush for me. And the hundreds of encounters I've had with bears at bear baits, pushing the sow with cubs up into a tree, so I can bait my set, and having the big boars, like the 500-pound bears that when you come to the bait, they don't really want to leave, but they just stand up and they just slowly walk away with their eye on you the whole time, not running, not overly worried. They're just like, okay, I'll vacate this for a moment. None of them could compare to the feeling of that one moose that time. But of all my encounters, that had the adrenaline rush, there's only been one where I ever felt like, honest to God, sheer momentary terror. And when it was the first year I was trapping Nimigus Lake, I'd flown this is going to be in my second book too, by the way. That's what the second book is about. It's about the year I took over that new trap line, and there's a whole bunch of it's like a book inside a book with a bunch of short stories and then things that happen. But anyways, this was a cabin that had at one point been a cabin for there was a fire tower about 7 miles down a trail on a big hill, and this was the closest spot that they could land a plane. So they had a cabin built there for the fire wardens, and they would land there, drop off all their supplies, and the guys would stay there and then walk up to their fire tower, and they had another cabin at the base of their tower. But they had a bunch of old, it hadn't been used in 20 years. The cabin was still good. I put a new roof on it, but walls were all solid, and there was old mattresses in there that were all torn to pieces by the squirrels and mice and everything. So that first day I spent the whole, day cleaning the cabin up, getting all the stuff outside, packing all my gear up to the cabin and whatnot. And it was, bedtime. I just finished my last coffee for the night. I had my bed rolled down on the, hadn't built a bed yet. I just had my foam mattress down on the floor, my sleeping bag on there, and I was laying back like this. Lights were out, everything. I was just laying back, just relaxing, had my eyes closed, and all of a sudden it was like claws in my face. And I swear to God, and as stupid though it may seem, I literally thought a bear had got into the cabinet. That was the only time in my life I could remember being utterly terrified for a moment. And I scrambled up, got my flashlight, and heard a scratching on the wall. I shone the light up into the corner, and there was a flying squirrel. That squirrel had come off the corner, I guess, sailed down and landed right on my face. And I am telling you what, bears, wolves, moose, whatever, it's pretty funny that the only thing that I can remember ever giving me utter terror was a flying squirrel. But when you are in that relaxed state like that, just almost out, and those 10 tiny little claws dig into your face, oh man. It was a moment to remember for sure. But anyhow, I'll get on my way here and go get some more traps set. Alrighty.